If you have been struggling with sleep, specifically difficulties falling asleep, staying asleep, what we call insomnia, you will know how uncomfortable this experience is emotionally. You have thoughts, you're probably thinking about sleep all the time, you're anxious, you experience fear, and maybe you weren't any of these things before you experienced like issues with your sleep. I'm going to be breaking down this inner landscape in today's video and also what you can do about it, like how you can actually start understanding why you're ruminating, why you feel anxious, why you have so much fear, and why you can't stop thinking about sleep, and also how you can start kind of reclaiming that dialogue that exists in your mind. As a heads up, this is the third video of a 4-part series where I break down the 4 key components of insomnia recovery. This third layer is really understanding our thoughts and emotions in a way so that we can learn what this discomfort's actually telling us and how we can slowly start breaking the cycle and claim our life back from insomnia. If you are new here, my name is Fiona and I'm a recovered chronic insomniac turned certified sleep coach. And I guess I just want to start by saying that I remember how emotional insomnia used to make me feel. Like also the speed bumps when I first started, all of it. I used to obsess around sleep, and it wasn't because I purposely wanted to, but it was just always in the back of my mind. I was always thinking about it. I felt so much fear around sleep, going away on holiday, sharing a bed with even my partner, someone snoring, whatever it was, like the thought, the idea around sleep was just always there. And it started making me feel like I was quite emotionally irritable, on edge, just not really my like happy self, and it really affected me. And the more I've now, I guess, throughout my recovery journey, throughout my pursuing understanding human psychology and the human mind, and also being certified, I now understand that as a culture, as a society, as a world, we are so out of touch with understanding why our emotions even present themselves. So I hope that in this video, you get a little bit of clarity as to why you're feeling a specific way, why it's not your fault, why you're not broken, and why you're definitely not the only one who's experiencing this, and ultimately how you too can start breaking that cycle. In order for us to understand why we have all these thoughts and emotions associated with sleep, we need to understand 2 things. Number 1, we need to understand the nature of our thoughts and emotions and how we kind of cascade into them, which I'll get into. And number 2, insomnia and how thoughts are related to insomnia and also what they mean. And then from there on out, once we understand, okay, like what's actually happening, why are we feeling a specific way, I will give you tools and I guess a few different techniques that you can implement to start maybe breaking and interrupting that pattern. To start, and I always use a pen for this whenever I'm having a conversation with my clients. So if you're a client of mine and we've talked about emotions, and you'll know that I have a pen with me. So the number 1 thing that I want you to know is that thoughts are completely automatic. Okay, thoughts, I guess mostly just happen. We've got thousands of thoughts every single day. Most of them are the same from the day before. 50% or more of these thoughts are inherently tend to be kind of negative unless you practice a lot of gratitude or positivity. But ultimately, they're negative because we are rooted in survival. If I were to tell you not to think about, I guess, this like orange case, which fits my nice little mic, you would probably think about the orange case because, again, the thought would automatically pop up into your mind. So that's number 1, first and foremost principle, is that thought is automatic and outside of our control, similar to sleep. So a thought comes into our mind, okay? So a thought comes in. And I like to think that there are 2 different types of thoughts. And this does come from acceptance and commitment therapy that teaches us that, I guess, our emotions and our discomfort as human truly comes from attaching too much meaning to our thoughts. So a thought comes into our mind, and we have 2 types of thoughts, either a positive thought or a negative thought. Now, what makes each of these thoughts exactly what they are? Positive thought are the thoughts that are maybe in line with who we are. So we all have this sense of identity, who we are as people. Say for me, a positive thought is I want to spend the weekend in the sun and moving my body and like doing sports. That's like an automatic thought that is in line with who I am as a person. So I allow that thought to be there, or I just let it go, right? Because that's who I am as a person. Negative thought is a complete opposite thought. It is a thought that is rooted in survival mostly. It is rooted in keeping us safe. They also are automatic, and they feel uncomfortable or negative because they are not in line with who we are as people. So, parallel example, a thought comes into my brain of, great, well, you want to do sports this weekend, but what if you don't sleep? Or what if you pull an all-nighter and then you won't be able to have your dream weekend? Well, that thought feels uncomfortable, right? Because the thought is not in line with how I want to show up in the world or who I am as a person. This is the most important thing that I want you to take away from this video, truly, is the only difference between a positive thought and a negative thought is what happens after that situation happens, okay? Because the negative thought kind of comes in, it doesn't actually mean it's true, because realistically, we cannot predict the future. It's simply trying to warn us of something, of a future possible scenario, but so are all the other scenarios are equally as possible. Like sleeping perfectly is the same equal scenario and out of our control. But we react to the thought in a specific way. So when the negative thought comes into our mind, we either end up having a dialogue with our thoughts or we end up obeying our thoughts. And in practice, this would look like the dialogue would be, I try and have a conversation back with my brain. So my brain I'm kind of telling my brain, that's not true. That's not going to happen. We're going to, take melatonin. We're going to do things. It's going to be fine. Like I'm trying to convince myself that the thought isn't real. Option 2 is that you obey your thoughts. So you almost let your thoughts dictate how you're going to then act, right? So, okay, well, I'm going to cancel my plans on Friday night just to make sure that my sleep is preserved on Friday night so that I can do all these exciting things on the weekend, right? So we're at the mercy of our thoughts. And that's kind of where the cycle kind of begins, right? We then, I guess, because we give our thoughts too much value, we end up suffering and stuck on that fear because we're trying to convince our thoughts that they aren't in fact true, or we end up obeying our thoughts as if they were, I guess, Hail Mary and what we needed to do. Most importantly, I want you to remember that you are not your thoughts. You are someone who experiences thought. We all experience thoughts. We all have positive and negative thoughts. And the only difference between people who, I guess, have these emotions and versus those who don't are those who attach too much value and too much meaning to their thought, okay? That fear, for example, like the emotion which is attached to the possibility of not sleeping, only comes from believing that what your thoughts are saying are actually real. And I know it's hard for us to maybe not believe it, okay, well, what if it really does happen? And this is where it's so important to keep coming back to the present moment and what's inside of our control. Because ultimately, thoughts are not inside of our control, and nor is the future. We actually cannot predict the future and we don't know what's going to happen. All we can do in these moments is to keep coming back to the present and keep asking ourselves, okay, well, what is actually possible for me in this present moment? How can I come back to commit to living by my values and who I actually am as a person? Not because my thoughts are telling me to act out of fear, but because I'm going to act in a specific way. So example, thought is there, I feel uncomfortable, I fear around anxiety around the fact that I may not sleep. So acting by my values would be, okay, well, the fear is going to be there, but I'm not going to cancel my plans because I know sleep cannot be controlled. I'm going to still try my best to have a fun weekend because that's just who I am as a person. I have my support system that I can talk to if the fear presents itself. So I'm no longer basically allowing the thought to dictate how I live my life, but I'm coming back to commit to who I am and how I want to show up in the world. Now, when it comes to sleep, the reason why you're having all of these thoughts are because you're experiencing a perceived threat. So your nervous system is going to send you signals, warning signals, fear signals around what's going to happen if you experience this thing. What we tend to do and why we tend to ruminate and end up kind of like in this spiral of thought is, one, we try and push the thought away. Two, we try and have a dialogue with our thoughts. Or three, we obey our thoughts. So ultimately we're allowing our nervous system to win and take over the dialogue that wakefulness is in fact a threat. Oftentimes, the most common mistake that I see is people telling me I'm trying to think positive things, or I'm trying to get distracted, or I'm busy during the day. That is great up until a specific point, because our thoughts are actually there to serve a purpose, okay? Even though they're not real, or even though they're trying to tell a specific story, it doesn't mean that we don't need to listen to them. And that is because I want you to think of your nervous system as a threat alarm system. Imagine that you're sitting at home and the alarm system goes off, or the fire alarm system goes off. The fire alarm system are your thoughts, okay? And instead of actually going to check to see if there's actually a fire, you're screaming at it, you're avoiding it, you're putting on headphones and you're trying to avoid it, or you're simply running out of the house without actually checking if anything's actually wrong. What the alarm system actually needs is for you to go and check to see if what it's trying to warn you of is in fact real. And then from there you can say, okay, well, thanks for the warning, but I don't need to worry about you right now, because that isn't in fact something that we're going to be concerned about, because one, it's either outside of our control, sleep, or two, it's a prediction of the future and we can't actually predict the future. That being said, it's just so important. So number one thing I see everybody pushing away their thoughts is for us to make space for our thoughts and emotions, okay? They're not bad. We live in a world where, again, we're told that we can only be happy and we can only feel peaceful. No, thoughts, emotions, they're all part of the human experience. And the more you just allow them to be a natural and normal part of being human, the easier it gets, okay? The emotion will pass quicker the more you allow it to actually live there. So this is where, you can almost kind of call it that befriending the emotion, okay? Just because you have a specific emotion, it doesn't mean you need to run away from it. You're going to start making space for this. My favorite way to do this, and actually the easiest thing that you can implement, and it sounds pretty silly, in order to create space, how can you ultimately be the version of you who observes the thought versus the version of you who is the thought, is by journaling. One of my favorite practices is called scheduled worry time, because your brain needs to worry about all the things it's worried about, and then you can keep coming back to what you can control. The more you keep practicing this, the more your nervous system will let go, because it's going to start internalizing that you are in fact listening to what it's trying to communicate. And the act of befriending wakefulness is going to get easier, because you're going to keep coming back to what you can control, having already processed those thoughts and emotions. Scheduled worry time is a time for you to write down all of your thoughts down on paper, unapologetically, without actually trying to change what you are saying or what you're thinking. You're not having a dialogue with your brain. You're not trying to convince yourself that the thought isn't there. And if you're worried that it's going to make the emotion louder, just know that that's the fear talking, okay? Just trust me on this one. Just give it a little bit of time. I also loved to do this when I was personally struggling in the middle of the night. I feel like my anxiety would peak at night. I know it does for a lot of people. And whenever my thoughts would get the better of me, I would actually sleep with a journal by my bedside table. And I would allow myself to get up, journal, write down all of my thoughts down on paper, allow myself to process all of those emotions, and then keep coming back to what I could control. So I would journal down my thoughts and then keep coming back to the present. And that was both during the day and also at night. I'm gonna leave it right here for this video. I know I've covered quite a bit and it can feel a little bit confusing. Please feel absolutely free to message me. You can email me or leave a comment in the comment section below if you feel like you're really struggling with your emotions or how to actually process them. Just know that, your body's actually doing all of this to protect you and not actually because you're broken. So the more you actually learn to listen to what your body's actually trying to say and work with your body, it also gets a lot easier.